Well, hey guys, this is Dr. Emil Tompkins, and I want to thank you for joining us on the Beyond Pain Relief podcast. This is episode number 38. We're going to talk about natural options, a new breakthrough in natural options for ADHD. Let's go.
You are listening to the Beyond the Pain podcast, where Dr. Emil Tompkins and his guests guide you through the latest techniques to relieve your pain and learn how to fuel, move, and think for lifetime wellness.
Hey guys, thank you for joining us. If you have a child with ADHD, or if you're dealing with it yourself, this can be an incredibly daunting challenge to overcome, or even just to manage. It can seem impossible to focus on the task in front of you, or maybe your child suffers in school because she doesn't pay attention to the teacher, or she's disorganized at home, and this seems to affect every part of her life. You want to see your child maximize their potential, achieve their highest potential, but you worry if they'll even make it through the school year, or gosh, even the weekend. There's a program that we have that when followed correctly, you can see a change and improvement in attention, improvement in focus, and be healthy in a really natural way. So in this podcast, we're going to discuss the different areas that you need to consider if you're going to see improvement in ADHD symptoms naturally. Our Brain Builder program for neurological health can accomplish this for you and your family. And why is this important? Because your family's health is at stake. Your child's health and potential are at stake. There are prescription medications options out there, and some of them can have an impact on your child's attention, which is good. But there are 18 reasons that you might want to reconsider doing that, or that you may want to consider getting some help along with what they're taking to maximize the ability to see some change, because there are a lot of side effects, and some of these side effects do worry parents when it comes to giving their kids some of these things, because they can and do cause nausea, stomach pain, vomiting, headaches, insomnia, loss of appetite, dizziness, irritability and mood swings, increased anxiety, fatigued, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, hallucinations, rashes and blistering, shortness of breath, seizures, numbness in the extremities. There are a lot of different side effects that can be caused by these medications. And there are other causes of attention problems that aren't even ADHD that sometimes get diagnosed that way, and we get these medications and we have these side effects when we never needed them in the first place. Here are some of those other causes. Dyslexia, or maybe the child simply has different learning styles than what's being taught, or maybe the child's bored, the material's not advanced enough, or maybe the material's too advanced and the child needs something simpler or on a different level. Maybe there are emotional or behavioral causes. If a child is bipolar, which is much less common, but if a child is bipolar, a lot of times they'll be put into that category of ADHD, and ADHD medications will completely create horrible problems in a child that's bipolar, or other mental illness that can occur. So you really have to be careful when offering something that is as complex or has the possibility of being invasive or having lots of side effects as medications, when there's so many different things that can be going on. These natural methods that we're going to be talking about will benefit anyone in their ability to think clearly and function and live healthier. When you have one of these other complicating factors and your child has ADHD medications, their symptoms can get worse. So we know that. So fortunately, there are natural techniques that can help alleviate some of the symptoms of ADHD that don't have the same negative side effects. And that is our Brain Builder system for neurological healing. And so we're going to talk about some of those pieces today. One of the things that we want to do is we want to remove any interfering agents. We want to rewire brain-body communication. We want to address sensory processing. We want to provide nutritional intervention. And we want to make sure that our kids are exercising, and there's very specific exercises that can make a difference for a child with ADHD. So we're going to start getting into that. So remove is the first step. One of the first things we're going to remove are things like additives and dyes, dyes, or preservatives in the diet. I had a wellness show host. He coined the word JERF, J-E-R-F, just eat real food. If it's not natural, don't eat it, because a lot of these additives, dyes, and preservatives have an effect on our mental state. They can be neurotoxic. Some of these things that are designed to make food more pleasing to the sight or pleasing to the taste have had neurotoxic effects. You want to try to avoid it altogether. There are 4 specific foods that feed ADHD that you want to make sure that you're avoiding as much as you can: sugar, dyes, wheat, allergies. So remove those 4 foods. When it comes to additives and dyes, lots of dyes are synthesized from petroleum, which can carry toxic byproducts, including mercury, arsenic, or lead. There are studies that have shown that food dyes increase hyperactivity in children, especially those that have ADHD. Dyes have been linked to long-term health problems and disease, and we can go into this. I'm going to try not to go into too much detail, but yellow number 5, all by itself, yellow number 5, is a carcinogen. They've found that the risk of yellow number 5 and cancer is relatively high. So let's see here. You can have chronic toxicity. 6 of 11 studies showed chromosomal aberrations. Yellow number 5, it's a neurotoxic. It's also been associated 1988 and a 1994 study. Yellow number 5 specifically associated with hyperactivity in children. So anything with a yellow dye, it's got to go. Eliminate sugar. Sugar and processed foods have been known to worsen symptoms of ADHD, including inattention, irritability, hyperactivity, and mood swings. Sugar also compromises the immune system. It has no essential nutrients and can make it more difficult for the body to process out toxins. So we want to remove the things that can be a problem. One of the other things that we tend to recommend as we're eliminating things is a specific kind of elimination diet. If you remove certain foods from your diet, very specific ones, for a long enough period of time, you can start to pinpoint what the body can be resistant to, or what the body can be sensitive to, and that will help you, because sometimes we rely on things like allergy testing, and allergy tests are only going to tell you what you specifically are allergic to, but you're going to be sensitive to a lot more things than than what we're actually allergic to. So next thing we're going to look at, we're going to rewire brain-body communication. The balance between the left brain and the right brain is a major focus of our efforts. When we have problems with right-left brain communication, we're going to see things like poor body awareness, proprioceptive issues with balance and that sort of thing. Poor gross and fine motor skills. We may see a persistence of things that are called primitive reflexes. And primitive reflexes are these things when you're a baby, when you're born, there are certain reflexes that you have that are kind of protective. You stroke the cheek and the baby wants to suck. That's an automatic feeding reflex that happens in babies. But there are a number of these primitive reflexes. And if your child at 3, 4, 5 still has these primitive reflexes, then we have a problem with brain-body communication that has to be addressed. Eye coordination is another symptom. Poor social skills, verbal communication can't happen unless the nonverbal communication is learned first. Abnormal emotional reactions, a sensory sensitive system. So problems with sensory processing in a variety of areas. Our vision can be off, how we handle touch, how we handle taste, how we handle things that we hear, how we handle certain smells. If you notice that you or your child seems to be really sensitive in one of these areas, just really doesn't like the way things feel, or really sensitive to sounds, or really freaks out over certain smells that you don't think is really worthy of that kind of response, there may be some issues with sensory processing. So that's something that you'll need to consider. All right. Some other things that we can do to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to avoid these issues. One of the first steps, and this happens, unfortunately for most of us, we're too late for this, but as more kids come, healthy pregnancy can have an effect on children and their incidence of ADHD. Studies have found that women who smoke or consume alcohol during pregnancy have a greater chance of having kids with ADHD. So during pregnancy, we start right there. Start before baby's born. Eat a natural, healthy diet while pregnant to help sure that your children have the nutrients they need to develop a healthy mind and a healthy body. Try to stay relaxed during your pregnancy and get plenty of sleep as to not cause too much stress on the baby while in utero. Yes, even babies can be under stress if mom is stressed. Nutritious foods. It's very important that our kids are eating well, and that will affect their mood and attention. Balanced healthy diet with nutritious foods can help the body and the mind function optimally. You want to make sure of a couple things. We want to limit any blood sugar fluctuations, because if we have a lot of fluctuations in blood sugar, then we're going to have a lot of fluctuations in energy level and hyperactivity. We want to reduce inflammation. Inflammation in different parts of the body can cause some of these symptoms too. Providing building blocks for healthy brain function. Nutritious foods will give your body, your brain, the building blocks it needs to function the way that it's supposed to be. Omega-3 fatty acids, very important, found in cold water, fish, oils, and seeds. They serve a couple things. Omega-3 fatty acids are some of the raw materials that the brain needs to be able to form and function. So you want to make sure that they're getting high amounts of omega-3 fatty acids. You want to remove allergens from the diet. We mentioned before. We have the what am I thinking here? We have the elimination diet that I had mentioned that will have an impact. If you start this elimination diet, that will remove those things that we're potentially allergic to or sensitive to, and that will be one of the first steps in having our nutrition help us instead of hurt us. And one of the freebies that we have today, make sure you check the show notes. There's going to be our elimination diet food guide. That's going to be our food list of things to eat and things to avoid. That's just a beginning in the process. That's not our program, but it's one little aspect of it that just using that all by itself can make some changes. So it's something to consider there. So when you're done, just go into the show notes, click the link for the elimination diet food guide, check it out, and let us know. Next, we're going to talk about sensory challenges, and this is a big one. And to illustrate this, I just want you to imagine for a second. Walk into a room. Let's say you walk into a room. What are the things that you see as you look around this room? Maybe you see a wall that's painted blue. You see a table and some chairs and a painting on the wall. And you sit down. That's what you would see. If you have a child that has a lot of sensory sensitivity, they walk into that room. They don't see what you see. They see a light blue wall with 14 specks of dirt, and blue is an uncomfortable color. They see 6 chairs, one that's a little too wobbly, and one that's way too stiff. And if I sit on that one, I'm going to be uncomfortable and I won't be able to sit without fidgeting a lot. There's some buzzing coming from the light in front of me. There's some clicking coming out of the fan over here next to me. The computer's making a weird beepy sound, and I just don't know what to focus on because there's so many things happening. Now, if you're that child that's so sensory sensitive and you walk into a room and you notice all of these things, just imagine going into a classroom and paying attention, very close attention to the one thing, the one teacher who's sitting there talking to you, when you hear 40,000 other things going around you. This is a big challenge that must be addressed. And so making sure that we address some of those sensory areas is going to be vitally important. Next, we want to make sure we're building the brain. There's a thing called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. What that means is brain-derived, it comes from the brain. Neurotropic helps to grow the neurons, and factor, a thing from the brain that helps to grow the brain. We call it Miracle-Gro for the brain. There's one way to activate your brain to produce more BDNF. There's one way that works better than any other. That exercise is, or I'm sorry, that thing is exercise. Exercise is the one way to activate your brain to produce more BDNF. That will increase your number of nerve cells. It will increase the connection of those nerve cells, allowing you to think better, think clearer, focus better. You want more BDNF. There is not a medication you could take. There's not a thing that you can take to do this. You release it with exercise. There is research on specific exercises and ADHD. You want to make sure that your children and you are getting proper amounts of exercise. Next thing we'll talk about, MTHFR, methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase. Now, don't worry about those words, but MTHFR is an issue. It's a genetic mutation that affects the body's ability to process folate. This affects growth and development of neural tissue. This is big. We talked about one of the first things you can do to help with ADHD is making sure that you have a healthy pregnancy. One of the things that they tell you is make sure that you're getting folic acid, because folic acid helps with the development of neural tissue. Problem is, there is a high percentage of people with this MTHFR gene, this genetic mutation that tells your body not to process folate correctly. So where folic acid is something that's supposed to help, if you have this MTHFR gene, folic acid is going to create neural problems. You need to supplement with methyl folate, not folic acid. There's about 50% of people with this MTHFR gene. So knowing that, a high number of us, half of us have this problem. Now, methylated folate is something that is safe for anyone to take and absolutely vital for someone with this MTHFR gene. So what should you do? Have the genetic test to see if you have this MTHFR gene? You certainly could do that, or you can not pay for the genetic test and just take methylated folate, because it's going to be good for you anyway. There's a 50% chance that you absolutely need it, and a 50% chance that maybe you didn't need it, but it's going to be healthy for you. So there you go, methylated folate. Now, let's talk about the brain development cascade. The frontal lobe, we're going to go right into the brain here, because if you understand the brain, then you're going to understand the why our protocol is going to help. The frontal lobe, so the front area of the brain, it's responsible for attention, for learning, for decision-making. You want to make sure that frontal lobe is functioning well. And when people have ADHD, one of the things that they've found, MRI studies are showing that a lot of these kids have frontal lobe development problems. It's just not developing as quickly as it's supposed to. So that area responsible for attention, learning, and decision-making, it's not being developed the way that it's supposed to. We need to get it to develop. Now, there's an area of the brain that's responsible for stimulating the frontal lobe. That area is the hypothalamus. It's responsible for temperature regulation and a number of other things, but it stimulates that frontal lobe. So we've got to make sure the hypothalamus is being stimulated so that the frontal lobe is being stimulated, because that is what's responsible for the attention and the learning and the decision making. There's an area of the brain that stimulates the hypothalamus, that stimulates the frontal lobe. That area of the brain is called the cerebellum. You got to make sure that the cerebellum is functioning well so that it stimulates that hypothalamus, so that it stimulates that frontal lobe. The cerebellum is this little handball-shaped piece of brain in the back of your head. Now, we got to make sure that cerebellum is working right, and the way that we do that is by making sure that we're stimulating that cerebellum. There are proprioceptors. They're these little nerve bundles. They're found in every single joint in the body. Those proprioceptors stimulate the cerebellum. The way that you make sure those proprioceptors are functioning well is with some very specific things. And these are things that you now have control over. Number one, exercise. Very specific balance and balancing type exercise will stimulate those proprioceptors to stimulate the cerebellum, so the cerebellum works well. So you want to make sure you're doing very specific balancing exercise. You want to make sure that you're maintaining a good posture, because once your posture is poor, it stimulates those proprioceptors in a bad way that over time doesn't positively stimulate your cerebellum. And the last thing, chiropractic care. Those proprioceptors are in the highest concentration in the entire body, in the upper cervical part of the spine, so in the uppermost part of the neck. When that upper cervical part of the spine is either not functioning well, not moving the way it's supposed to, or out of position, you affect those proprioceptors. And when you affect those proprioceptors, you're not going to be as healthy as you can be. So we want to make sure that we're positively stimulating those proprioceptors. And then when doing that, we stimulate the cerebellum. That stimulates the hypothalamus, which then stimulates the frontal lobe, helping you to focus, have better attention, higher learning, better decision making. Vitally important to put those pieces together. To do that, you need chiropractic adjustments to balance that upper cervical part of the spine. You need very specific postural balance exercises to help stimulate the cerebellum to function positively. When you put those pieces together, you start to see some really fantastic changes. Chiropractic care is one of the best things you can do to affect the symptoms of ADHD because of its effects on the nervous system. When you get down to that root problem and you remove those subluxations and help relieve, you'll help relieve those symptoms long term and promote brain development. Guys, I thank you for joining us here today. What I encourage you to do as we go through this week, number one, go into the show notes, grab that elimination diet checklist. It's vitally important to make sure that we're on top of our nutrition. So that's one way to start. Definitely do that. And get started to make some changes nutritionally. You can contact us if you're interested in learning more about this Brain Builder protocol. We would do an evaluation on your child to see if this is something that would benefit them, and we'll put all the pieces together. Adjustments to start making changes in those proprioceptors to start feeding the nervous system the right way. Some very specific sensory style exercises to make changes in the way that sensory-wise that they're doing and functioning. Looking at supplements to support the brain and the body in the way that they're supposed to. And again, we put those things together in the right way. We see some really fantastic changes. So in this program, we're understanding a few things, understanding the right-left brain balance of our child. We're going to eliminate abnormal nerve stimulation with chiropractic adjustments. We're going to try to solve some of the sensory challenges with specific sensory integration exercises. We're going to develop a personal nutritional protocol to promote brain balance, the elimination diet, and functional nutritional supplementation if it's necessary. It's a program specifically tailored for your child. Sometimes to make a drastic change in your health and behavior, we've got to make a drastic change in our lifestyle. But guys, the benefits are priceless. So how you choose to help your child's ADHD, completely your prerogative, however you want to do that. However, with the natural things, there's so little risk of complication that it sure is worth it. So, hey, thanks for joining us today. Click the link in the show notes to get that info. There's another link to schedule an evaluation if you'd like to do that. And I thank you for joining us on this week's podcast. Have a great day. Hey guys, it's Dr. Emil Tompkins. Many people fail to make a change in their health until things are drastic, until we've gone so far that it's so challenging to make that change, or we feel like it's almost too late, and then we're much more reluctant to make those changes in our health. This is a problem, and it needs to change. It needs to stop. When you find something that has an opportunity to make a difference in your health or in the health of someone around you, I invite you to take that opportunity to make that change for yourself or for someone you know. So I have a favor to ask of you. If you've listened to this podcast and you feel like there's something here that you think will benefit someone that you know, I invite you to share that podcast with them. There's a share link on the bottom of the screen. I want you to click that share button to share this with others. Give others the opportunity to experience the Beyond Pain Relief podcast. Share that with others. Make a difference in the health of someone around you. And I thank you so much for doing that. This is Dr. Emil Tompkins. Thank you for joining us on the Beyond Pain Relief podcast. And thank you for making a difference in the lives of the people around you. Have a great day.
You are listening to the Beyond the Pain podcast, where Dr. Emil Tompkins and his guest guide you through the latest techniques to relieve your pain and learn how to fuel, move, and think for lifetime wellness.